Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. We know road salt can be useful in the winter, stopping us from sliding on ice or potentially preventing some car crashes. But salt can have a negative impact on the overall environment. So here to tell you more is our environmental contributor, Lawrence Gunther, who's also the host of Outdoors with Lawrence Gunther, which you can hear Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on AMI Audio. You can also download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Hey, good morning, Lawrence.
Good morning, Dave.
So, Lawrence, let's talk about the impact of road salt. What is the overall impact on the greater environment based on the amount that we're using in cities?
It's not good. I mean, they've done some testing now, right? And look, this is not a surprise. Governments have known that road salt causes problems. The Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment, so that's all the provinces and territories in the federal government, all the ministers got together. They came up with a guideline on how much salt is too much salt. And they defined it as 120 milligrams of salt per liter is considered chronic sort of long term. So if that's in the water all the time, you're going to have some issues. 640 milligrams per liter is considered acutely toxic. And I looked up what is acutely toxic. So that means if you contact that amount of road salt in water, within 14 days, you start showing symptoms of toxicity. That's what acutely toxic is that one contact, symptoms show up within 14 days. And these are the measurements they're going by for a very good reason, because it's not good to have this stuff going into our rivers and creeks and into our lakes.
Lawrence, I have a dumb infrastructure question for you. How is it that the road salt is ending up in those rivers and lakes?
That's a good question, because you know what, Dave, you and I have talked about sewage going into our rivers and lakes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this was a problem with our old infrastructure. A lot of older cities have combined sewage and storm drains. So the drains in the pavement, you know, the grid patterns that rainwater, snow melt goes into, was also going in. That's going in the same pipe as our sewage, and that was all being contained and brought to the sewage treatment plant. And these things would overflow sometimes when the heavy rains, and they'd have to release pressure and let that into the rivers. So now cities have separated those out. So the storm drains don't go to the sewage plants anymore. They just go directly to our rivers and creeks.
So let's say this acute toxicity occurs due to road salt. What impact does that have on a freshwater ecosystem?
According to the research they're doing, it can be quite substantial. Look, if you think about the fish, the invertebrates, the insects, they all get affected. A frog, I didn't know this, but frogs breathe through their skin, right? They don't breathe through their mouths. They don't have gills. They actually pass oxygen and CO2 back and forth through the water, through their skin. If you put a frog in water that has acute toxicity because of road salt, it can suffocate. It infects long-term chronic issues with road salt, can affect their viability of their fertilization. So it affects their development, their ability to spawn. So there's some really serious situations that if we don't get this under control, it could be a problem. And chloride is a component of road salt. It doesn't break down that quickly. Like road salt will break down. We see road salt, we put it on the ground, 2 days later, it's gone, right? It doesn't just disappear. It breaks down, but the chloride component of that road salt doesn't break down for a long time. And that's what ends up in our ecosystem.
Lawrence, you mentioned in your first answer there are some ratios involved here. The number of milligrams per liter creates a toxicity. So is this a matter of just the degree of road salt that we're using? Is there a judiciousness that comes into play here?
For sure. Like they found the Ottawa Riverkeeper, where they were measuring at 5 different creeks after big snowfalls, where they apply a lot of snow to melt a lot of salt to melt the snow, or say it rains after the winter and you have all that road salt lying around. They found levels of chloride in the creeks where these storm drains were emptying into that were 5 times higher the acute toxicity level, into the thousands of milligrams per liter, right? So this is a problem. Now that those creeks wash into rivers, and those rivers wash into lakes, And you think, well, okay, because it gets diluted eventually. But you know what? Our Great Lakes are getting increasingly saltier. Well, I'm not talking ocean level salt, but there is a noticeable level of salt in the Great Lakes. And, our Great Lakes have a 20% of the world's fresh water. It doesn't refresh. I know we got, rivers going in and the St. Lawrence drains it all out, but a lot of those lakes don't refresh for a couple hundred years, right? It's in there for a long time. So this is something we need to think about.
So, Lawrence, solutions elements to this conversation, and obviously there's sort of larger infrastructure solutions and there are individual solutions. So what are some alternatives for cities?
Yeah, road salt can be, they've experimented with a lot of different technology. They're mixing sand in. They know that road salt doesn't even work. After minus 10 degrees Celsius, it stops melting things, right? So they're using more gravel and sand and less road salt in extreme cold temperature situations. When it's less cold, they mix the salt with some water, so they need to use less salt because it makes a sort of a slurry that spreads out. You can melt this ice on a driveway that holds two cars. Technically, you can do this with 1 cup of salt, right? How many of us go, we buy these bags of salt at Canadian Tire, wherever, for our driveways and our walkways. How many times you just use 1 cup of salt, right? When you're putting this stuff? Never. It's cups and cups and cups.
I'm taking the whole bag, Lawrence. I'm taking scissors. I'm cutting the bag open and I'm making moves.
Dump it and spread it around with their snow shovel. Yeah, I mean, that's what we, really, and because we have people say, no, put more down. It's you didn't put enough down. We really need to push back on that and say, you know what? I understand it's not taking effect just yet, but give it a chance. Or it's just too cold. It's not going to work. Get some kitty litter. Get some sandbox sand. Kitty litter is really good. It's not harmful to the environment. Yeah, you got a little bit of a mess to sweep up in the spring, but that's a lot safer for the environment than just applying tons and tons of salt. Personally, I use cleats on my boots. You get them at Costco for $13. Yeah, they're only gonna last you one winter before the silicone straps snap, but they're just little tiny metal nibs under the boot, not the great big metal cleats. You don't want to wear that around your guide dog, but these little silicone things with little nibs under them. And a dog, they have their own built-in cleats. I love walking on snow. I hate walking on that salt and slush, and my dog hates it, booties. But for sure, with your guide dog, you definitely need to clean their paws with water, with a towel. Every time you come in the house, the last thing you want your dog doing is licking the salt off their paws, right? This is chloride again. Yeah, and we're talking acute toxicity. And they repeat that over and over all winter long. There's long-term side effects for sure. It's gonna limit your dog's life.
Yeah, I had this moment on Sunday. I was doing a bit of cleaning around the house, and I said, "Oh, it's been a minute since I vacuumed the carpet by my door." And you see how much road salt comes off that carpet when you get the vacuum going. You hear the as it's taking it in, and then you feel inside of the actual trap, and you go, "Oh, goodness gracious! How much salt have I been tracking in here?"
Yeah, private condo owners and businesses, they don't want to be sued. Slip and fall cases, right? If you can prove that the property owner was negligent in terms of their response to an ice event, you can successfully sue. So what do they tell their landscapers or snow removal people? Look, I don't want to be sued. You put down lots of salt. And this is what we need to sort of get away from. Like, I've been in northern cities in Sweden, where in high urban areas, they put snow melting equipment under the sidewalks in the cities.
Yes.
So, it just melts the snow. You see that more and more around condominiums and the driveways, the walkways, the steps. That snow all melts because of snow melting equipment underneath. This is where we need to go to, passive solar radiation, heating water, warming water, pumping that through under the sidewalks and the steps, melting the snow innocently, nicely. This is where we need to get to. And
Lawrence, it's just smarter infrastructure. We live in a winter climate. The majority of this country lives in a deep winter climate. This is just smart infrastructure.
Absolutely, Dave. Absolutely. And if you go north out of Southern Ontario, there's all those communities. They don't even use salt. It's just sand and snow, and that's it. You put cleats on your
put some chains on your put some chains on your tires. Put some cleats on your feet, and you go get it done.
That's it. That's it. And your dog's cool. Your dog's
cool too. Hey, Lawrence, this topic is great. Thank you for bringing it to us. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen.